So, today we're going to talk about the book, The Foundations of Mindfulness by Eric Harrison. I believe this is the 5th video for the book. And today's topic is going to be the mindfulness of states of mind, also known as Citta. And to me, this is a very interesting subject because if you, for those of you who are familiar with the yogic scriptures, there is I believe it was Patanjali who says that yoga is described as Citta Vritti Nirodha, or translated into English, meaning yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. In other words, mind is going all over the place, and the moment that ceases and it becomes like this mirror still body of water, then you can actually start to really see through it, and that's what yoga entails, as a matter of fact. So I find that to be very interesting. Now, just to recap a little bit, we were talking about the foundations of mindfulness according to the Buddha, and there were 4 foundations. We have covered mindfulness of the body, in other words, observing the state of the body at all times. We have covered the mindfulness of emotion, and when we talked about that one, we were mainly talking about being able to ascertain what was called the valence of the emotion, meaning not so much what's the flavor of the emotion, but is it positive or negative, and how much so. And so today it's about mindfulness of state of mind. So what I'm going to do is dive straight into the text and then do a little bit of commentary on that. So the Buddha says, how does a monk contemplate his states of mind? He recognizes the mind that is caught in desire and the mind that is free of desire. He recognizes the mind that is caught in anger and the mind that is free of anger. He recognizes the mind that is caught in delusion and the mind free of delusion. He recognizes the shrunken mind and the distracted mind, the undeveloped mind and the supreme mind, the restless mind and the settled mind, the mind that is not free, and the liberated mind. He carefully observes how these states of mind arise and pass away, and what causes them to do so. He observes this both in himself and in others, and he lives alone, reliant on no one, attached to nothing in this world. He lives observing the 5 hindrances. When his mind is caught in desire, he knows this is desire. When his mind is free of desire, he knows this is the mind free of desire. He carefully observes how desire arises and passes away and what causes it to do so. He learns how to extinguish desire when it arises and how to prevent it arising in the future. In the same manner, he examines the 4 other hindrances, namely anger, lethargy, anxiety, and despair. He sees how they arise and pass away and what causes them to do so. He learns how to extinguish them when they arise and how to prevent them in arising in the future. He lives observing the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is a particularly important part. I underlined it, so that's how I know. When he is mindful, he knows it. When he is not mindful, he knows it. He carefully observes how mindfulness comes and goes and what causes it to do so. He learns how to strengthen mindfulness when it is present and how to bring it forth when it is not present. Likewise, he contemplates the other factors of enlightenment. He carefully observes how investigation, energy, bliss, stillness, absorption, and equanimity arise and pass away, and what causes them to do so. He learns how to strengthen each of these qualities when it is present and how to bring it forth when it is not present. He carefully observes the 7 factors of enlightenment arise and pass away and what causes them to do so. He observes this both in himself and others, and he lives alone, reliant on no one, attached to nothing in this world. So This is to me as profound a text as it gets, and again, let's take a step back and see it in context of the different foundations of mindfulness. We started with mindfulness of the body and then mindfulness of emotion. Now it's mindfulness of states of mind. You see a progression happening in the sense that mindfulness of the body is the easiest one to exercise because it is the most tangible and it is very easy to understand, right? If I right now tell you to be mindful of your feet and just to feel into them, you can do that. I can ask you to be mindful of the sensations in your tongue, for example, the taste in your mouth, if there is such a thing, the sensations in your hands or your face. I can ask you to be mindful of the temperature that you feel around your body, and all this is very tangible. So you can sort of wrap your head around it, and you can start to exercise it more and more. Then comes mindfulness of emotion, and again, we talked about the valence, positive and negative. In other words, how good or bad am I feeling right now in general, right? And you can be mindful of that. Now comes states of mind, and this is when the flavor of the state of mind starts to matter. So it is a progressive path where you become ever more mindful and more mindful of subtle things as opposed to gross things such as a sensation in your body, right? Now, so the other thing is this idea again of how you need to be mindful at all times, right? So you can see how then you start to develop this strong mindfulness that leads supposedly to enlightenment, in the fact that you start to become mindful of the states of mind arising and passing away, as opposed to those states of mind becoming who you are, or you becoming lost in them, so to speak, right? So in the normal low-level state of mind, before you start doing meditation and practicing mindfulness all the time, when desire arises, you can't say, this is my mind experiencing desire, because you are desire. You become the emotion and you are totally lost in it. When you exercise mindfulness of states of mind, you are able to separate yourself from that state of mind and observe it, so you create a distance between the state of mind and yourself. So whenever there's desire, you step back and you go, this is desire in my mind, all right? And by doing so, you have become mindful of desire, and you're no longer lost in it. You're able to observe it. Not only are you able to observe it, but as the Buddha explains, you're able to step back to the point where you ascertain what made it rise in the first place, right? What was it that triggered desire, or what was it that triggered anger? And it is mostly the case, and I was discussing with a friend last week. It is more often than not the case when you are in a lower mindful state of mind, or a non-mindful state of mind, that you will get angry or you'll feel desire and you'll act these things out. And it is only after it is only well after the emotion or the state of mind has subsided that you can look back and go, oh, I reacted, and maybe you were not really yourself, meaning you were completely hijacked by that state of mind. You were literally not there. You, as the single point of awareness that can observe a state of mind, were not there. Only the state of mind was there. So it essentially took you over. You acted it out, and then maybe a few minutes or hours later, you step back and go, oh, why did I do that? Well, because you were hijacked. And that's how learning normally progresses, is you, in retrospect, look at what happened, look at how you responded, and you try to learn from that. But it's only way after the fact. And, that's when you come back to your senses, so to speak, right? Whereas what the Buddha is talking about here is to, in real time, be constantly monitoring the mind, studying these states of mind, how they arise, what makes them arise, observe them as they are there, and say to yourself, this is anger or this is desire, and then be able to assess what made it arise, and then learn how to make it subside, not by forcing it. Again, we talked about trying to force yourself calm, and how that's, you know, like the worst idea you can have, because you're in this contentious mode. But so making it subside, or allowing it to subside rather, and observing it also how it arises in other people, and then learning how to prevent it from arising again, which is, in other words, you are normally a passenger in this roller coaster of emotion that goes up and down, states of mind that arise and pass away. But the moment you step back, now you have a certain degree of control, if you will, about the states of mind. And then if you are like on a very high level of mindfulness, there comes a point where you are able to just prevent it from arising and passing away anymore. You're not a passenger in a roller coaster cart. You are the guy controlling the roller coaster now, and making it go in any direction that you like. But that is a process, of course. And so what is interesting is that with regular emotions, for example, such as desire or anger, the degree to which you get hijacked, and how often you get hijacked, and how long you get hijacked for, starts becoming less frequent and less intense, and you are able to retain at least a modicum of mindfulness, in which you are able to observe yourself in the situation and observe the state of mind that has arisen, as opposed to being completely hijacked by it. So this is gold, right? This is real power, because this is you being able to entirely trust yourself and rely on your ability to manage your state of mind and your emotion, rather than being hijacked by it. So I honestly, I can't see how you would be able to trust yourself or ask somebody else to trust you, unless you are at least in the process of developing something like mindfulness of states of mind. Because if you don't have that, you truly are hijacked by them. Now, I used to, I remember, and so, I've also noticed some tendency in people who have not developed this mindfulness, and it's maturity, if you will. It's just an accelerated process of maturing. And I have seen people who lack this, who are very volatile and are hijacked by their states of mind on a constant basis. And what they will do is they will typically rationalize that and say, and sort of almost glorify the way they are completely spontaneous. And if they're totally happy, they'll start bouncing around. And if they're totally angry, they'll have a go at you or something. And they'll say like, yeah, but I'm an authentic person. I'm so authentic because when I feel like something, I just act it out. And well, on the one hand, that's true, right? It is true. But on the other hand, it's not you who's being authentic. It's just like random accident of nature taking you left and right, and you're going with it because you're not really there. And so true authenticity is when the real you starts to shine forth, despite of the fact that you might be feeling anger or desire or happiness or all these things. So that is not to say that you are like this control freak that's trying to manipulate emotions. It is more to say that you, the real you, is actually there, as opposed to being emotion taking you over, and the real you only sort of popping up and waking up again like half an hour later and going like, oh, what was that? Okay, so that's a big thing. But then there's even that more, how would you put it, like a deeper point here, which is the part that I underlined. And that is, so you have this ability to call emotions in real time, right? That you call them out and you go, this is so-and-so, right? And you are able to examine or study what made it arise, what makes it subside, and then strive to prevent it from doing so in the future, because this is a fluctuation of the mind. this is a vritti, right? In Sanskrit, there's a vritti that prevents the mind from being mirror clean and therefore clear. But so here's the other one, and that's like next level stuff. So he says that the monk is able to observe when he is mindful, and he says this is mindfulness, but he is also able to observe when he is not mindful. Like, I was thinking, like, what the hell is that about? Right? Like, how can you be mindful of not being mindful? And the answer to that is that mindfulness is like a quality that starts to develop in your mind. And so what I've started to notice the more I meditate is the fact that whenever I'm hijacked or whenever I'm lost in thought, my ability to bring myself back and say, I'm lost in thought starts to grow. So that whereas that ability at the beginning is zero, you are lost in thought and you're completely gone, and then you come back. As you meditate, you are lost in thought for very short periods of time, and then because you have that habit of bringing yourself back during formal meditation practice, starts to seep in through the rest of your life, so that when you are lost in thought during as you go about your day, something in your mind goes, oh, I'm lost in thought, I'm bringing myself back to the here and now, and I'm bringing my sense of self, my I amness back to the moment. And so that's how it happens, right? And so it gets to the point where when you're not mindful, you know, I'm not mindful right now, right? It's an amazing thing. It is also one of the reasons why your dreams start to become more lucid. You become able to lucid dream. And it's not that you're doing it. It's just your mind is now occupying a space where there's always mindfulness, regardless of the state of mind. And so you might be totally asleep and you might be dreaming, but you know that you are. And then you are able to see dreams in a very, very lucid fashion, because you've developed, mindfulness has grown in your mind. And apparently, so I hear the way that the more this develops, you are actually able to be mindful even when you are in dreamless sleep, which is like the super deep sleep. And so that becomes the point where you can almost argue that you are mindful at all times, all the time, even when you are quote unquote unconscious or not mindful, which is quite amazing. And so that is how you are able to to pull yourself back into mindfulness more and more, is because you are doing formal meditation to practice that, and you are exercising mindfulness at all time, and you are growing that quality. So listen to this. He learns how to strengthen mindfulness when it's present, and how to bring it forth when it is not present. In other words, mindfulness becomes the one thing that you want to have all the time, and the one thing that you are exercising all the time at all times. As I'm doing this video, I am constantly getting lost in the story and the things that I'm trying to explain to you, and I'm constantly bringing myself back into awareness of the now, into the I amness, into that feeling of I am. And so it is the life practice, right? Like, this is it. This is the one thing. This is the North Star that you are constantly bringing back to. So your system deviates from that either through states of mind or thinking or stuff like that. Thought, mindfulness of thought will be the fourth foundation. We'll discuss that one in the next video. But you are constantly bringing yourself back to the now, to the I am, to that sense of I am. And so this is enormously important. And then another interesting part about this third foundation of mindfulness is he lays out the factors of enlightenment. And so he talks about investigation, energy, bliss, stillness, absorption, and equanimity, right? And so those are all elements that you are trying to cultivate and which bring about enlightenment. And enlightenment typically has this shroud of mystery, and nobody really knows what it is. And how could you? It's like, people try to strive for it, but you don't even know what you're striving for. It seems like a worthwhile goal. But it is not this switch. It is a continuum that keeps arising in your mind as you are less and less lost in the fluctuations of the mind and more retaining your sense of self. Now, I thought it would be very cool to describe that sense of self a little bit further, because we talked about what mindfulness is, and I have been listening lately to a guy called Rupert Spira, who preaches the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, which is what they call the direct path to enlightenment. And so he makes a case for the fact that all this formal practice is and all the guesswork about what enlightenment is not really necessary anymore. There's a direct path to enlightenment, which is to ask your question, sort of, where am I, or who am I? And then you'll start to notice that you are not you are not your visual field. You are not the sensations in your body. You are not the sounds that are coming in through your mind. You are the awareness that is observing all those things. Yeah. And so you can turn the light of awareness onto itself, which in a sense is kind of impossible because it's too close to you. It is the source from which your reality arises. But you can in a sense become aware of it, and so you become in a sense enlightened in that way. The only problem is that you need to do that thousands or millions of times for that quality to become what you are. Yeah, and that is in essence enlightenment. Whereas when you have not practiced that, first of all, you need to kind of get a knack for it. Okay, so it's not as if some people truly struggle with this. For some reason, some others get it. I kind of get it, right? That sense of that I-ness is something that is always there with you, despite of anger or whatever is around you, or things that are coming in through your senses. So or in your mind, like thoughts and stuff like that. So the fact that you are able to observe what's coming in through your senses, or that you're able to observe thought, means that you are not what's coming in through your senses. You are not thought. You are not your body. You are not your emotions, your mind, because you are able to observe these things. You are the one. You are the I that is able to observe these things. And so you start to go from that periphery of thoughts and emotions and sensations and sense input, and you start to retract all the way back to that point of awareness that is able to observe all these things, that I-ness, that sense of I. And so that's why the Buddha, when he describes, I don't know if I can find it on the fly, I didn't really prepare that passage, but there somewhere it says that mindfulness is being aware of what's happening to you and being able to describe it to yourself. Because see, that ability to describe it to yourself means that the observer has taken distance from the observation, whether that observation is a thought, a sensory input, or a state of mind or an emotion. The fact that you are able to describe it to yourself means that your self, your true I, has now taken center stage and is able to see things from that vantage point, as opposed to being enmeshed with your periphery, so to speak. So in that sense, enlightenment and the practice of mindfulness and what we're trying to do is to not be enmeshed and mushed up with the periphery of your thoughts, the periphery of your sensory input, the things that you're seeing out there, and the periphery of your emotions. Now, the things that you're seeing out there feel, you can identify that as periphery. Your body starts to become a lot closer to who you think you are. You're like, oh, this is me, because it's so close to that center of awareness, if you will. But when it comes to your emotions and your thoughts, those are so close to you. Like it's so close to the I that you immediately identify with them, and now you've created this mushiness of you start to confuse yourself with those thoughts and in those emotions, right, and those beliefs, if you will, and states of mind. But the fact of the matter is that if you observe them and you describe them to yourself, now you have taken something that is typically what you confuse for yourself, and then you have created distance. So they are now also in the periphery. And so that sense of I-ness starts to grow and grow and grow. And the more it grows, the more enlightened you become. And it's a beautiful practice. Spitta describes it as very powerful because it is that sense of I, which is completely peaceful and clear, is always there for you to find if you just care to look for it. And it immediately takes the sting away from things like anger or hurt and things like that, because that I, your true I, is unable to experience or to be hurting or angry or anything like that, because it is just pure awareness. It's just pure observation. Now, it is still the case that you can feel angry, right? But you don't have to confuse anger or pain with who you are, because once you've identified who you are, that you is able to observe the anger and therefore is no longer confused with it, right? So you're no longer confusing your anger or your pain with who you are. This works for bodily sensations as well. I've been experiencing this idea of, I've been doing cold showering for, I don't know, some 3-4 years now. And it at first, you clench when you cold shower and you go, right? So, and it's painful and it's and it's like, it's very unpleasant. Nowadays, I am able to observe the bodily sensation with such a distance from that vantage point of the I-ness, the I am, that I see it in the periphery now. In other words, it doesn't get in, if you will. And the same goes for those states of mind. They no longer get in. You are no longer confusing who you are with the pain or the state of mind or the thought or the bodily sensation. You are very clear in acting as the observer and then seeing that in the periphery of you, and that's very powerful. And it's a wonderful practice that if you read through the lines, that is exactly what the Buddha is inviting us to do with these foundations of mindfulness. He says, observe the body all the time. What that means implicitly is regain your sense of I-ness, of pure observation. And then from there, observe the body. Regain your sense of I-ness, and from there, observe the valence of emotion. Regain your sense of I-ness, and from there, observe thoughts or observe states of mind. And so that is in essence the practice, and in that regaining of your sense of I-ness, that's what mindfulness truly is, and that's what leads eventually to enlightenment, because you are no longer hijacked by the periphery. You have discovered and brought forth your true self. Your true I has now started to come to the foreground, and from there you move. Also very useful to know during meditation practice, right? If you lose your object of meditation and now you're lost in thought, I've noticed that it's very difficult from there to go back to the object of meditation, because both of those, thought and the object of meditation, are in the periphery. They're not you. Whereas if you notice that you've lost it and you first come back to the center of yourself, which is your I-ness, your observer, and from there now go not to thought but to your object of meditation, that's a very easy move, because you're in the middle. You have all the leverage in the world. You have all the leverage to move left or right from that center point. Whereas if you're in the periphery, trying to move from there and move your mind around is super difficult, right? So you observe that you're lost in thought, and you go, that's why the Buddha says, and you say to yourself, I'm lost in thought, right? So you are mindful of that. And being mindful of that means that you've returned to the center. And from that center, you then project back out to your designed object of meditation. So that was the third foundation of mindfulness in the book Foundations of Mindfulness by Eric Harrison. And I hope that was helpful. And I'll be back soon with the fourth foundation of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of thought. So talk to you guys soon.